coming to you live from the Sandton Convention Centre. This is where the South Africa Investment Conference 2022 is being held, or the fourth investment conference. It all began way back in 2018 when President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that South Africa would try and attract investment of 1.2 trillion rand over 5 years. So a very lofty target, and presidential envoys were deployed around the world, and this was the target. Going into today, we are in fact, as the President says, 2/3 of the way there. 744 million rand, I think, is what billion obviously is where we've got to at the moment. So that's about 2/3 of the way, and we'll see how close we get to that target. In fact, 2022 is the 5th year, so we should be on the 5th investment conference, but we're on the 4th. That's because last year there was no conference. There was a lot going on with the July unrest. I haven't heard a clear understanding of why that didn't take place in 2021, but now in 2022 we're back on track with the 4th investment conference. Of course, some of these investments are pledged and they're not actually materializing yet, and that is something to watch, but we will hear from one of the presidential envoys who says that all these pledges are being audited, they're tracking everything, and will be transparent about how this all plays out. Now, I'm joined by one of those companies that have made a big pledge, Pfizer's Patrick van der Loo. He's head of Africa and Emerging Markets, and I'm also joined by Alistair Mokoena, CEO of Google South Africa. So this is the business side of things. These are the people who are coming and putting down the money. Gentlemen, thank you for being with me. Mr. van der Loo, let me start with you. Tell us, give us the details of what Pfizer announced today.
First of all, thank you very much for having us here. Our investment really dates back all the way to 2014, when we started collaborating with the BioVac Consortium on manufacturing high-tech vaccines in South Africa. So for the past 7-8 years, we've been working on skilling up and scaling up the capability and capacity of the BioVac Consortium. When the pandemic hit, the BioVac Consortium was selected as one of the sites where we want to manufacture our COVID-19 vaccine. So the announcement that we made today of 255 million rand really is money that we're spending in 2022. In fact, we've already started spending it to make sure that the BioVac site is able to manufacture 100 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. Those 100 million doses are all meant to be used in the 55 member states of the Africa Union.
So this BioVac facility has been lauded as a great example of a public-private partnership. But give us more details. So you presumably keep the full copyright to Pfizer vaccines, but what does South Africa end up with? What do South African scientists end up with tangibly?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Look, we go broader with regards to our scientific investment in South Africa. So we invest a lot in clinical research in the country, but also when you look at specifically the BioVac site, it's basically reversing back from the basic steps, I would say the most simple steps in manufacturing of a vaccine, the fill and finish, all the way back to also making the actual product. So when you look at our investment on that pneumococcal vaccine, the BioVac site is now being accredited to really actually make one of the most complicated vaccines in the world, but in South Africa. So we're really scaling up the science level in South Africa as a result of that investment. And that is what gave us the faith as Pfizer that they would also be able to manufacture basically the first mRNA vaccine in the world, but in South Africa.
Because you're being very selective. So South Africa is one of, I think, the only site in Southern Africa. You can confirm. Why are you being so selective? Why not make this a free-for-all for African scientists who can do it, and you keep your IP?
Yeah, no, that's a very valid question. But when you look at how long we've been working with the BioVac Consortium, 7-8 years, and we're now on the cusp of starting to really manufacture that vaccine, you need, as an organization like Pfizer, have the trust in partners that actually can deliver in what is really a pandemic product to basically end the pandemic. So in order to do that, you need skills, you need a company that can very flexibly move, and you need a company that can very quickly scale up to 100 million doses. And BioVac has given us that confidence in order for us to be able to make that financial commitment.
All right, Mr. Mokoena, you did tell the SABC a little bit earlier about some of Google's activities. So let's briefly recap, because I would think, okay, Google is run by some techies somewhere in the world. They don't need to be physically in the country even. But there's a lot going on tangibly in South Africa.
Yeah, thanks very
and
much.
let's just clarify, you're not making an investment today, but there's been R1 billion investment for Africa announced several years ago.
Thanks very much for having me, Francis. So we did announce October last year that we're going to be investing $1 billion across the African continent over 5 years.
$1 billion.
$1 billion, which is quite significant.
Rand, yeah.
And I think the big thrust there is that Africa needs help in its economic recovery. We've seen how battered every economy has been by the pandemic. We've seen how marginalized communities have really struggled. And we've seen how small businesses, which are the lifeline of every economy in the world, have really, really suffered. And we've also understood there's a need to help society become productive again with lives and livelihoods. So turning education into online education, helping people be productive from home. So that's all the stuff we've actually been doing, and really driving this thought that if we unleash the full potential of the internet on the African continent, we will see Africa rise, which is why this conference is so exciting, because it really is about celebrating Africa's brilliance. It's about confirming that Africa is a proper business case as opposed to a charity case.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about seeing all these social partners coming together, because the need is immense and it needs everybody to come together.
And the more internet penetration there is in Africa, in South Africa, the better for Google, because the more users you have, the more advertising, etc. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think of Google's very ambitious mission of organizing the world's information and making it accessible and helpful to people, we realize that our role is really to get people onto the internet and to help Africa's benefit from the digital dividend and the technology that actually has enabled the world to leapfrog many economic problems. So if we look at the fact that the average internet penetration on the continent is about 60%, contrasting that to Europe and the US, where you're sitting at 90%, there's a big job to be done here. About 1.3 billion Africans on the continent, only 300 million are on the internet. So that's why we've invested in the subsea cable to bring affordable, fast, reliable internet access all the way from Portugal down the Atlantic Ocean coast, down the spine of Africa into South Africa. So this cable that we pledged to invest in 2 years ago right here is finally landing in June this year, which is very exciting.
Yeah. Is it the game changer that everybody says it is?
It's an incredible game changer. I mean, first of all, it's going to indirectly create 180,000 jobs in South Africa over the next 3 years. It's got 20 times more capacity than the first cable that was built, which means faster internet speed, which means much more international bandwidth, which means data cost should come down. Actually, retail and wholesale prices of the internet are going to come down by about 25%, and we think that the economic impact will be about 0.3 percentage points, and internet penetration will go up by about 7 percentage points. So proper game changer.
Okay, I want to ask you both quickly something, and then I have a hard question for each of you. But firstly, does this conference make a difference? And the same question to both of you. Because like I asked the presidential envoy, surely we would have investment in South Africa anyway. But now you get to go up on a stage, and maybe there's a little bit more publicity around it. Does this inspire companies to really come? Is it a platform that makes a difference, Mr. van der Loo?
I think it does. I think it gives an opportunity, first of all, to make it clear what the investment is all about, what it means for South Africa, to the people in South Africa that make the decisions. But it's also a platform for us to actually engage with the politicians, with the stakeholders that we need to further expand on these investments in the future.
Mr. Mokoena?
Yeah, I think this investment conference is critical, because I think for us to unite around one goal, which is how do we invest in Africa's potential and Africa's brilliance, and how do we correct the narrative that Africa is a basket case as opposed to a proper investment business case. So we're really encouraged to see all these organizations coming forward and saying, we believe in Africa's potential, we believe in South Africa's potential to really grow, and here's us putting our money where our mouths are. So very, very crucial. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in crowds, and we know human behavior is driven by herd mentality. So if people come together and say we believe in investing in this market, who are we to doubt it? So all of us are here to say Africa is bankable, South Africa is open for business.
All right, my hard questions, and then we link back to studio, to Pfizer. In South Africa, there's been publicity around the lack of transparency around vaccine pricing. We don't know the details of the contract, so that's part of the problem. And people have been decrying the fact that it seems like developing countries, African countries, are paying more than some European countries. And I know there's some rationale for that. But there are protesters that have been outside saying business is part of the problem. It's not the solution. What would you say, and can you give us any insight into what is going on and how Pfizer is treating us as a country in terms of this great IP that you have in terms of the vaccine?
Yeah, and I understand the question because obviously people want to know what the price is of
Can
a
you tell us?
No, I cannot.
Oh, no.
But what I will say is that from the get-go in Pfizer, our starting point was equitable access. And equitable access for us meant that we had a tiered pricing system. So high-income countries pay twice what middle-income countries pay, and low-income countries get a non-for-profit price on the vaccine. And we've been very clear about that from the beginning, but we don't share the individual country prices. So when you look at equitable access, what that means, we have to date, as per this month, manufactured 3.2 billion doses of the vaccine. Our commitment this year is to manufacture between 4 and 5 billion doses available for the world's population. But we've also made it clear that at least 1 billion of these doses need to go to low and low middle income countries. So last year we actually made 1.1 billion doses go to low and low middle income countries. And we're well on track this year already with over 300 million doses year to date to make sure we live up to that pledge as well.
All right, appreciate the answer. Sorry you can't tell us the actual price. Mr. Mokoena, there's so many issues for you because I think people are concerned about the strength of tech companies in general, given what's going on with advertising, privacy. But I'm really interested in Russia that has just shut down Google. I mean, how do you deal with a conflict when you get embroiled because the politicians embroil you? Just give us some insight into that situation.
So I mean, Google really tries to develop helpful products because we see it as our responsibility as a tech company to really make our products accessible and helpful to people. So yes, we're not doing business in Russia at the moment. It's very tough. We've got colleagues in Russia who are affected. We've got colleagues in the Ukraine. So commercially, it's been a big knock for us, but also emotionally because these are people we have relationships with. So it's been very, very difficult. But I think where we do try and help, it's about using our mobility reports to help governments understand where people are moving to so they can give them help and so on. It's about giving directions to kind of bomb shelters. It's about helping people access verified, credible information because in war times there's a lot of propaganda, there's misinformation and disinformation. So we use our platforms to verify information and make sure that there's no fake news. So I think there's a lot that technology can do to help people stay safe and really find help.
Can you be ethical when many countries will try and dictate to tech companies what they can and cannot do?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a company, you need to be clear about your own moral compass. So if we say that our mission is to organize the world's information and make it accessible and helpful, there's a key word in there, which is helpfulness. So the kind of ethos that runs through Google as an organization is a sense of being helpful. And we keep asking ourselves, are we being helpful today to the world, So when I look at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, the big question is, how can we help people with our products and our platform? And part of it is about fighting fake news, directing people to help, So yeah, but I think it's just very, very disturbing to see that the war is carrying on, and we really hope that we will see it come to an end soon.
All right, thank you both for your time here at the Sandton Convention Centre. That was Patrick van der Loo, Head of Africa and Emerging Markets for Pfizer, and Google South Africa CEO Alistair Mokoena.